Stormy Daniels. Smack Trump's rump like he's a bad spaniel.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Auerbach from Artsbeat Radio, here with JPEG Luca. We are from 89.5 FM WSKB. We are in Cranwell Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts, which is the summer home of the Capitol Steps. And we're in our program today, we're going to be talking with members of the Capitol Steps. They are a political satire group. They've been around for over 35 years. They put the mock in democracy, and they're here at Cranwell through Labor Day. Of course, if you're not in the Berkshires and you're traveling around the country, there's a good chance you can find the Capitol Steps in a city near you. You can check their schedule at capitolsteps.com. You can listen to some of their clips on YouTube, find the link at their website, and every Friday and Saturday night, they perform at the Ronald Reagan Trade Center in Washington, D.C., in the theater district across from the National Theater. So great chance to see them anywhere in the country. And with us this morning to kick off everything is Howard Breitbart, who's one of the pianists from the Capitol Steps. First of all, you're one of several pianists, correct?
Yes, I am. I'm one of 5 pianists.
One of 5. And do you perform with the same group of members of the Capitol Steps, or do you switch around?
Well, we're rotated around so that some of us have different obligations with our families, and I'm real flexible, so I get to go to great places around this wonderful country and see all sorts of different political views and values that are different to everybody. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you sure did. You sure did. How long have you been with Capitol Steps?
I stopped counting because it's now over 25 years, and I'm afraid it's going to date me a lot.
So you started as a kid?
I started as a child, yes.
Yes. So right out of elementary school? Or?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. That's very generous of you.
I have a question. Most of the material that the Capitol Steps does is utilizing either show tune standards or movie standards or pop songs that the general audience would know. How do you carry all this music around, and how do you rehearse?
I carry it around in my head. The idea for me is not to be glued to sheet music. So do your practicing at home, try to learn it. But so I don't have anything to carry around, and then I don't have anything to lose. Interestingly, when I first joined the Capitol Steps, there were so many new tunes. I think there was like 20 tunes I had to know. And I had all the chords written down, and I was all ready to go. And somehow, mysteriously, our producer, Elena Newport, I think she stole the music from me so that I'd have to see if I could do this by memory. So I was very glad that she did that, and I can do it by memory. People say to me, how do you remember 50 tunes? It's not always easy. It's a challenge, but we do it.
Do you transpose the music for the particular singer?
Yes. Since our group, since we get rotated around so much, basically there can be 4 different singers that sing a single song. So there can be changes in styles, changes in keys. Hopefully you get to rehearse with that person. You can remember what you did the prior time you were with that person. That's part of the challenge is getting into the soul of the singer, watching them and listening to them. And hopefully, once again, you remember which key they sing it in. But you can always ask them.
How much time do you get to rehearse a new piece of music?
Mm-hmm.
Not the music, let's say, but the new song that you're going to throw into a show. When do you get the song, and how much time do you have before it goes on stage?
It's a great question, because sometimes we'll get a song like the day of or the day before, because the issue is so hot. Like the Stormy Daniels tune that you were just listening to, that just came up so suddenly, and someone had a great idea to parody that with stormy weather. Sorry to give it away, but so we wanted to get that in as quickly as possible. So the idea is it used to be a fax when I first joined the group. Now it's an email telling you this is new set of lyrics for a new song, and you want to listen to it and get it in your body as fast as you can, so that you can be fresh for your audience.
So if they email you the new lyrics for a song and you don't have the music, it's a song
Happens
you've
a
never
lot.
played before, where do you find the music?
Okay. I'm so grateful for the internet now, because you can find almost anything, sometimes for a cost, on the internet. And I'm also so grateful for YouTube, because I can hear, especially in the case of Stormy Weather, which is a song I happen to know already. But you can hear so many different versions of things by going to YouTube. It's become such a great encyclopedia of information.
So when the Stormy Daniels song
Yes.
came and you were going to Stormy Weather, whose version inspired you? Was it?
Oh gosh, I want to say Lena Horne. I was really impressed. I forgot how I knew she was a wonderful performer, but I forgot how great of a singer she was.
So when you're the pianist of a group like the Capitol Steps, which is really musical theater, even though it's satire and all of that, it's kind of like the cabaret idiom. Do you get a chance to practice the music every day, or do you choose to, or do you just go out there and do it every night?
It's a combination. I like to warm up before a show. So usually, like here at the Cranwell, you'll hear me playing a half hour before the show, before they let in the audience. But that gets me in the spirit of the evening, because you have to be, on your tiptoes accompanying the Capitol Steps, because they're so lively, and you're really trying to give them important rhythm and listen to the lyrics, so that you don't cover up the lyrics, is one of my goals. So you have to listen to the jokes. You have to be ready. You can't just come in here mellow. You really want to be with it.
When did you start getting into music?
Wow. My parents tell me that I was 5 years old when I started taking piano lessons. I was the youngest of four, and I had very good pitch. So I remember my brother, who's closest in age to me, would be practicing his music. And according to my mother, I don't know if this is true, but I would sit down and play what he was trying to practice. I don't remember doing that, and I sincerely apologize to my brother if I showed him off, because he was a very talented pianist himself.
And when did you get serious into it? Did you go to school to study music?
Good question. When did I get serious? It's interesting. I had a classical background, and at the time, so long ago in the dark ages, when I was young, they didn't know what to do with someone that played pop or someone that played a little bit of jazz. So my teacher was very sweet, though. She would let me play my classical music, and at the end of the lesson, she'd say, "Okay, do you have anything else to play? What have you learned by ear?" And then I started accompanying singers and a group. It's funny, because my dad actually started a group called The Chosen Children, and it was a Jewish version of the Capitol Steps, believe it or not. We would take words from popular songs of the day and change them to just talk about Jewish issues of the time. I don't remember what the Jewish issues were for a 15-year-old at the time, but that's where I got my start playing for singers.
And how long have you been with Capitol Steps?
It's been over 25 years. I think I remember Bush 1 was the president when I was in.
Is this something you do full-time, or do you have other outside things that you do?
This is my full-time job, I'm proud to say. And occasionally I'm able to do musically direct or accompany other singers. I do a lot in the cabaret community. I live in Washington, D.C., so I'm able to work at a lot of the theaters. I enjoy accompanying singers more than anything else. That's my favorite thing. And occasionally I'm involved with musical theater projects.
Are there any composers or musical theater works that you've done that have inspired you, or that you bring to the Capitol Steps when you're doing a performance?
Interesting. It's funny that you asked that question. I want to say all of them. I've done Richard Rodgers reviews, his music is so beautiful to me. And so melodic. And yes, we do a couple of the Richard Rodgers tunes in the Capitol Steps. But then I look at Sondheim, who's so fast and clever, and the lyrics are amazing. I mean, of course, the melodies are amazing as well, but it's hard to keep up with his tunes. But all the experience that I have working with the, especially the musical theater composers, I think really inspire me to be a better pianist for the Capitol Steps. It's about the lyrics. And interestingly, I just read something the other day about Leonard Bernstein. And apparently, someone interviewing that was, someone doing an interview about him mentioned that he thought the most important thing about classical music was timing. And I thought that was an interesting thing. But that's so true of playing for the Capitol Steps, listening for the joke and trying to give them the support that they need.
Question that a pianist asked me to ask you. You play in theaters all over the country, and you walk in. What kind of pianos do they provide for you, or do you carry an electronic keyboard?
There's places that don't have pianos, so luckily we have a wonderful crew that will set up a piano for us. I am really appreciative when I walk into these great theaters that we play at all around the country, and there's this beautiful 9-foot Steinway just sitting there for me, and it's like, oh my God, it's just terrific. I mean, I love the electric keyboards, that they can be there to give us something when there is no alternative. But if you can play a Steinway, as Berlin said, I know a fine way to play a Steinway. I'm sorry.
There's a show playing down the road that is a musical about, or a play of music about Irving Berlin and Harold Arlen and Jimmy Van Heusen getting together, and they all sit around a Steinway and they play their hits while they bemoan the fact that rock and roll is going to put them out of, put them out of business. But I wondered, because I saw the Capitol Steps last year in Northampton, Massachusetts, and that beat up old piano was probably as old as the Opera House itself that you played in, and you walk in. How do you even know that the piano's going to be in tune, or is that your challenge?
Or is it better if it's not?
No, it's not better if it's not. Everyone's happier if it's in tune. You're just hoping that people read their contract, because that's supposed to be done. But so grateful when it is done correctly.
Do you have time off between gigs to kind of see what's going on in the news and interpret it musically, or do you just go, regardless of the political climate, you're there to put the music up there?
Interesting. I'm there to support whatever is going on, and it can be hard, no matter what your political leanings are, and hopefully there's, no matter how you feel today, there's tremendous therapy through humor and music and rhythm. And I got to tell you, I have the best seat in the house, because I get to watch them up close every night. And people ask me how I can laugh at the same jokes over and over. Okay, I can, because I'm watching them create new jokes, and I'm watching the performers with their energy, and the best seat in the house lets me watch the audience. And people laughing together is so healing, and it really, no matter how bad you feel about what's happened earlier in the day, it is so therapeutic, and it makes you feel so good. So people need to come and see the Capitol Steps just to, it's so much better than any other therapy. Really.
Somebody said that laughter is the best medicine, and that seeing a Capitol Steps performance is cheaper than therapy when you think about it. What are the audiences like? You're here in the Berkshires all summer.
Right.
You've been here a couple of days. What are the audience? Are they receptive? Is there a bit of an edge in today's political world? Do they come in wondering if you're going to make fun of somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find the audiences here in the Berkshires very intelligent. And I find that they listen, or they're trying to listen, and they will laugh. but I can also see the wheels turning, the thought process is going. So my hat's off to the smart people that live here.
Are the audiences here different than Washington or other parts of the country?
Boy, I think at the Ronald Reagan Center where we perform on the weekends, I think that the audiences there are mostly tourists. Not all of them, but mostly. And I think they're really coming there to laugh as much as they can and to see, I think they want to see if we approached the latest tweet or the latest scandal or whatever is going on.
Do you ever run into a situation where you go out to play and there's somebody that you're mocking on stage is sitting in the audience? Has that ever happened?
I haven't had that happen to me recently because now I think those people run for the hills. But I remember playing for, I think it was Al Gore's 49th or 50th birthday party in the executive office. And standing in back of me was Al Gore and Bill Clinton. And I don't remember if it was before this or after this, but I remember Congress changed, and as it does all the time, and Newt Gingrich became the powerful person. And what did he do? He called Elena Newport, and he requested the Capitol steps to perform at his first, I think it was a breakfast meeting. So at that point, they were on, the politicians were, bring it on. We want to see what you got.
So you don't know if any of the current administration's been to a performance?
I am not aware of it, but we invite them. Please come and enjoy. Laugh at yourself. Laugh at the opposite party.
I think if you can laugh at yourself, that's a huge thing anyway.
Isn't it?
And when I saw the show, my house, myself and my wife, are very different views politically.
Wow.
And one of the things that we realized is we were both laughing at everything you did. And it seemed to me it was balanced. Do you work towards keeping the show balanced? Things change all the time.
Our writers do. We want to insult everybody, or no one is spared. So
we want to make sure we don't leave someone out.
Right, and jokes. I have so much respect for our writers, and coming up with jokes. There's something that has, you write a line and someone has a physical response to it. What a great feeling that must be. So.
Well, as someone once said, you want material? There's no better place to find it than Washington. So.
It is a great place. But granted, the Republicans are going to be picked on a little more because they're mostly in power. They have the power. So if that changes, the reverse will happen. But we'll make fun of everybody.
So you're going to have this nice summer vacation here in the Berkshires playing for the Capitol Steps. Then you go back to Washington, or do you go out on tour?
I'm sorry. I'm thinking. I'm trying to think of what my schedule is, but I'm available to go on tour. August is, I think, mostly in-town shows, but come the fall, it's going to be very busy, and we're going to be all over the country.
So we're going to take a break here to acknowledge the underwriters that support programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB. We've been talking with Howard Breitbart, who's one of the pianists with the Capitol Steps and is currently here at Cranwell, this incredible resort in the Berkshires, where you can see the Capitol Steps until the end of August. In the meantime, you can check out where they're performing at capitolsteps.com. You can connect there to the YouTube channel, and you can hear some of their work. They've got a brand new CD out called Make America Grin Again, which you can order online. And if you stick with us here on Artsbeat Radio and with Mark Auerbach and Jay Pagluca, we're going to be talking with the Capitol Steps on this special today. You'll meet Mike Thornton and Barry Barron. You'll meet some of the other people that are involved in putting the mock in democracy here at Cranwell, in our nation's capital, and at theaters all over the country. So don't go away. Welcome back, everyone, to a very special program here today on 89.5 FM WSKB. I'm Mark Auerbach with Jay Pagluca, and we are here at the incredible Cranwell Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires, with members of the Capitol Steps, the political satire group that is here performing at Cranwell nightly, except Tuesdays all the way through the end of August. We've got Barry Bairn, who's one of the longtime performers and a contributor to the Capitol Steps, and Mike Thornton, and also another longtime performer of the Capitol Steps. And Mike Thornton is sort of like a local because he grew up just over the border from Westfield in Windsor, Connecticut. And so it's great to have both of you here today.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome to our summer home.
It's a great summer home, and I guess they built this space for you all maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Correct.
Now, how long have you been coming up to Cranwell?
About 11
I think
years
this
now.
is our 11th year. Yeah.
And both of you have been up here.
Yes.
Every year.
Every year.
Now, it seems that every time I get to see the Capitol Steps, the two of you are performing, but are you always performing together, or are there different people?
No, they tend to. There are enough people in the group to do 3 different casts anywhere in the country, and they always mix us up. And it's a good thing that they do, I think, because everybody brings something different to the roles that they play, and it keeps you on your toes.
Now, if you've been with the Steps, what, over 20 years?
Yes.
So you played lots of first ladies, lots of presidents, lots of...
No presidents
No
yet.
presidents yet, but soon.
Yeah.
Soon.
I should have said presidential candidates, and lots of other officials. Are there any one over the years that has become a favorite of yours?
Well, I do love doing Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I don't know, and on the other side, I believe Monica Lewinsky was a lot of fun.
What makes Sarah Huckabee Sanders fun?
She's such a strong personality. She's got very strong physical attributes as well. So it's fun to get the wig and get eyebrows on and come out, and the entrance always gets a big laugh because she's not generally a jolly person. She's always she has a bit of a combative relationship with the press, and it shows when she comes out to take the microphone.
You mentioned when you come out on stage, you get reactions. One of the things I noticed is the strong costumes, the characterizations that you do. As soon as you're there, people know who you're playing. And how do you do that so well? Do you have people working that train you? Are you that good? I'm sorry to ask it that way, but
Actually, fear is a great motivator because we don't have a lot of time, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think that it's really a learn as you go kind of job. For instance, when I started doing Clinton, or W, or Trump, it wasn't as good of an impersonation. I think people got it because there was the wig and the mannerisms and the red tie down to the ankles and so forth. But it gets better. One wants a better reaction, so you just work on it longer, and then it just sort of evolves.
So here it is. Here's what you're going to do, and make it better.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I was just blown away. It was so much fun.
We try to give like little pieces of the personality because we have to go and change a wig and a mustache or whatever, or a tie or all of it.
I lost track of how many people were actually in the show. How many? Maybe that's something I don't want to give away, but is it really that big a cast?
Well, did you see us when we came out in the curtain call?
Yeah.
That's it. You've
That's
got
it.
3
Okay.
guys, 2 women, and a piano player, and often people say, we thought there were a lot more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
And it just seemed
That's the
huge.
magic.
And that's the magic
It's very
of your
vaudevillian
theater.
in its
Yeah.
So
presentation.
when you get, I want to ask Barry, when you get a chance to play a Sarah Huckabee Sanders, how do you pick up the mannerisms? Do you watch a bunch of television clips? Do you listen to her voice?
I'm fascinated. I've always been a political geek since I was a child, so I watch every press conference, and because I love to watch her interact with the press, and so I pick it up from just exposure to the press conferences.
Okay, because, she is somebody that I would think is sort of easy to satirize, but somebody like Kellyanne Conway, it's harder to pick out the physical aspects of her than Sarah Huckabee, who's, out there kind of marching.
Well, With Kellyanne Conway, I tend to use, we have the wig and a few little mannerisms, but mostly we just try to suggest the character. We don't always go full, full throttle with an impersonation when a costume or a wig can suffice, along with the material. The material is what we rely on primarily.
I peeked backstage before the show. I'd actually never been backstage.
You hadn't?
And I saw all the sunglasses and the wigs and all of that. Who actually picks those wigs and puts all these outfits together? And how do you keep track of them when you're traveling from city to city?
Mike, you want to handle that one?
Oh, okay. We have, well, it's really
A lot of thrift shops.
Yeah, it's very high tech. For instance, there's a roll of black gaffer's tape, and that becomes our mustaches. So there's somebody who generally is better at cutting mustaches than others. So we're real mon pa on purpose. That's the idea, to be very kind of low end,
And if we're missing a costume piece, the duct tape also comes in very handy for fashioning a brassiere or a whatever,
Anything.
a hat, whatever
Sure.
we may
Tape fixes
need.
pair of
everything.
handcuffs or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
But there is generally a tech person who travels with us that sets that up. And then in the office, at the world headquarters, as we call it, Old Town Alexandria, they're the people there, Elena and Mark and Laura, people like that pick out wigs that suggest who it is. And then we have the guy, our tech person, just line it all up before the show, line up the sunglasses. We try to tend to see what's coming so we can, if I'm going to play Joe Biden, there's a Biden wig. And I try to spot it before the show so I know where to go because it's a quick turnaround.
Right.
Sometimes we're just clamoring around because we can't find the wig, and that's pretty funny. That's comedy right there.
That's when you want to have a camera backstage
Yeah.
because you have
And the little monitor in the corner.
You have people throwing wigs out of bags and looking under tables,
Yeah.
and of course time is ticking.
And actors are blind when they're in the middle of the show because it's right there in front of them. Where's the Clinton wig? And the poor tech guy goes, it's right there,
Yes.
right? It's right in front of you.
You
Say- it
you
would've been
guys
here.
play theaters all over the country, and some of them are, ornate and have great backstage facilities, and some of them are like this particular space in Cranwell is rather bare bones as a theater. It's really a function area that's been converted to one. What's the best theater that you've ever had the chance to play, and what was the one that was so dramatic backstage that you get headaches thinking about it?
Barry has a lot of favorites. I do too. It's the old ones, right, Barry?
Well,
the
I love
haunted
playing
theaters.
obviously the Pabst in Milwaukee, and there are so many beautiful old theaters around the country that that I love to play, and I'm also intrigued by whether they are haunted or not.
When Barry
all
comes in a
haunted.
theater, she says, "I think this one is haunted," and then sure enough, you'll get one of the people on the crew say, "Oh yeah, there's Joey. He's up in the seats." every
Someone
night."
always has a story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, some theaters are haunted, correct?
Correct.
And so-
some are not.
so
Sometimes
are
you'll
there-
come in and you won't feel anything.
So are there any haunted beings that treat you better in any particular theater?
We consider any spirit that doesn't drop drop something
Drop
on
a
our
light,
heads
yeah.
while we're performing.
That's almost happened to Howard,
to be-
actually.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Generally speaking, the spirits are kind, and maybe they're getting a laugh themselves. They could probably use it.
But generally, the old Barry and I are right on the same page with that. The old ornate vaudevillian house theaters that they've resurrected or kept up or redone completely. They're the best.
You think about the history of these
Yeah.
places and all the famous people who have played on
Laurence
these.
Olivier, Caruso,
Exactly, and
it's just, and they've signed the walls and stuff. It's just.
To think that you're playing
That's
on
my
the same
favorite.
stage is it's such a thrill.
And then on the other end, I remember one in I think it was Providence, Rhode Island. It was I don't remember what the theater was, but it was an old theater that hadn't quite been redone yet. And the backstage, I think you could see it was in the middle of the winter, so it was below zero, and I think you could see outside from the backstage. So we were that cold, with our coats on in between songs and things. So it does have its full spectrum.
I would assume that with some of the theaters, like you both played the Academy of Music in Northampton, very historic theater.
Yes.
And some of them are small and intimate spaces like that. And then you must play large theaters that are 2,000 and 3,000 seats.
Right.
We do.
When you're in a large theater, is it more difficult to relate to the audience than it is in a small, intimate house?
I don't think so, because once you see how high up the audiences go, if they're in the first tier, second tier, wherever they are, you make an effort to play to everybody, because you don't want to cut people out of the experience by just playing to the people in the orchestra. What did I'm trying to think of the guy Barry who played Dame Edna. You think of Dame Edna, and she would always look at the people up in the cheap seats and call them the miserables, the missies, she would call them, and but sometimes you get your best laughs from the missies.
I always try to acknowledge if it's a big theater, you can't see past, let's say, I don't know, sometimes 20 rows, sometimes it's 8 or 6.
Right.
But I'm playing as if I can see everyone, because we want to relate to them, just like Barry said. And at the end of the show, after this long monologue that I do, there's usually a nice response. And I try to acknowledge people that are up, because they're getting it too. And then you want, like Barry said, you want to include everyone. So that's always fun. I think in a big theater we get people the reactions are bigger, because people are all there to see us, and if it's 1,000 seats that's full, or 300 seats that's full, as long as it's full or it has a big crowd, the reception is fantastic. So that's.
And we
what it's about.
love meeting people after the show.
Right.
We go to the lobby and shake hands and chat with people, and so that sort of adds to the experience for them and for us too.
Do you ever get someone, hopefully you get all the smiles and yeah, that was great. Do you ever get the other reaction they weren't happy with your show?
Oh, of course. There's one show I recall that I think it was in Texas, and we were doing a song about Euro Disney, and the people who were the characters were 2 employees of Euro Disney, and of course they were being very effete and disdainful of the Americans who were coming to visit them in France, and so they were doing this very funny number called Europest to
Europest, go away, I need my rest.
Right, exactly.
It was one of our best songs.
It was one of our best songs.
Mike Tilford, I think, wrote that.
Right, exactly. And after the number, some woman came running down the aisle and to the front of the stage, where she turns around and says to the audience, "I am from France. I wish to speak. We are not like this." It was hilarious.
That's great. I never heard that one.
Yeah.
And people thought it was part of the show, probably,
So that will happen occasionally.
I had someone said that that they really didn't like the fact that we referenced Canada at the end of the show, which we do, and I don't want to give away too much, but they said, we're in Canada and we don't like that you reference us that way, although it's a very positive reference. So you just never know. Generally, though, it's positive.
Right.
To be fair, I work with a lot of people remotely in Canada in my real job. So I have a lot of dispatch centers, a lot of people that are up there. And as they've watched our politics unfold over the last few years, they're just looking at this like it's a huge comedy show. Yeah. So your stuff must play great if it's up that way.
They really know what's going on.
Yeah, they do. They are very intelligent, and they do know, and they're going, shaking their head and going, how does this play down there?
Right.
Have you ever run into the situation where you've impersonated a Politico in your performance and they're in the audience?
Yeah.
I believe that has happened, hasn't
sure.
it, Thor?
We were at the Warner Theater in Washington, D.C., which is a mid-size, 1,500 or something. And it was a DNC fundraiser for Al Gore. And backstage with us, and this is really cool, was James Taylor, Jackson Brown, Bill and Hillary, other folks, Neil Young, people like that. And we each had our 10 minutes. you know. And so Bill had his 10 minutes, and this is, so he wasn't president anymore. He was, how would that have worked? Yeah, he wasn't president, but he was doing a fundraiser for Al. And so they were there. I mean, they heard us, and I played Bill, I'm sure, you know, on that. I don't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. But
And
we
I believe
definitely
Giuliani
did some of them.
and Ted
Yeah.
Kennedy and other people have
Nancy
been
Pelosi was,
have been there. Yes.
And they've been pretty gracious.
Usually, or if they're not, they just leave.
I would think that if you're going to be in politics, you understand that you will be the subject of satire. It comes with the turf.
Comes with the
Absolutely.
territory.
And the interesting thing to me is that if we do have somebody famous in the audience who is not portrayed in the show, it's not unusual for them to come up and complain that they weren't in the show, you know, so why wasn't I there?
yeah,
So,
aren't I good enough, bad enough to be in your show? Yeah.
I get the feeling that Mr. Trump is not necessarily, he doesn't have a sense of humor about himself. How does that play with you folks? Does that help you enjoy it better?
Well, our home theater, the Ronald Reagan International Trade Center in D.C., is literally steps away from his hotel. So,
And the White House.
and the White House. So I just think it's only a matter of time before.
Well, he's a very
Just put a
stable
speaker
genius,
outside.
you see.
Yeah, just put a
So
speaker
being a very stable genius, you know, he can pretty much take in anything and not
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah.
You both have been with the Capitol Steps a long time. Is there in the various political people that you've played, is there a favorite going back that you enjoyed portraying the most?
Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
She may not be over though, right?
She may not. She is back in the news again. But I was the first person to play Sarah in Alaska after she was nominated, and I was so nervous because I didn't know how it would go over, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it, and so every time we go back there, if she's at all in the news, we'll include her in the show, even if it's for a cameo.
What about you, Mike?
Bill Clinton and W, those guys were both funny in their own right. Just they had funny mannerisms. They had interesting, you know. Bill has that kind of, you know, the kind of sound that he has, you know, and W has that kind of Texas kind of thing going on. So it's those guys had a lot of mileage. We got a lot of mileage out of them, even long after they were out of office, because we would bring them back. We'd find a reason to bring them back because they were that funny, you know. And plus, I'd worked 8 years or more with each of them, so, you know, my own impersonations. So I was pretty good at it, and we all get good at it after some years.
Right.
So we were pretty experienced, so we tried to keep them in as long as we could.
Now, there are multiple casts of Capitol Steps. So you said you played Sarah Palin, and so other actors in Capitol Steps played Sarah Palin. Do you try to create the same Sarah Palin, or do you give it your own spin?
Well, like I said, everybody brings something unique to their characterization. So you're not going to see a carbon copy of every other person in the group who plays that character, and that's one of the things that keeps the show really fresh, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here to acknowledge our underwriters who support programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB. I'm Mark Auerbach with Jay Pagluca. We're here with members of the Capitol Steps, Barry Barron and Mike Thornton, and our chief engineer, Peter Coles. We're here in Cranwell Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts, where the Capitol Steps will be playing through the end of August. Of course, if you're not here in the Berkshires and you're in Washington, D.C., you can see them every Friday and Saturday night at the Reagan Office Building in downtown Washington, just steps from the National Theater. I mean, I could have said the Trump Hotel or the White House, but I'm keeping it in my theater mode of the National Theater. Capitol capitalsteps.com is the place to go to find out where they're performing, to get a glimpse of their new album, Make America Grin Again, to check out their YouTube channel, to listen to a back episode of their NPR radio specials, Politics Take a Holiday, and more. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach with JPEG Luco here on 89.5 FM WSKB. Peter Coles is our engineer this morning. We are at the Cranwell Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts. We are visiting the Capitol Steps, the political satire group that has been putting the mock in democracy for over 37 years. This is their 11th summer at Cranwell. They're here through the end of August, and it's an absolutely beautiful resort. I've never seen anything quite like it. I got a chance to hang out with them last week a little bit. Beautiful golf course, restaurants, pool, and it's in the heart of the Berkshires, just minutes from Tanglewood. So hopefully you'll get a chance to stop by Cranwell and see the Capitol Steps. And later on in our program, we're going to talk with some of the people from Cranwell about a transformation that's about to happen here with new management coming in to turn Cranwell into a Hyatt-branded property. But anyway, we have Barry Barron and Mike Thornton from the Capitol Steps. Both have been performing there for a long, long time. I have had a chance to work with both of them over at least a 10-year period and watch the shows change every time I get a chance to see them. And we were all together here last week, and it's been a great summer and a great opportunity, and we hope all of you that are listening will come up here to Cranwell and see the Capitol Steps live in performance, because no matter what we tell you is happening today, tomorrow's show will be different, because somebody in the news is going to make a new headline that is just crying out to be musicalized and satirized, and that's what you guys are here for.
Correct.
Yep.
How did you get involved with the Capitol Steps, Barry?
Well, I had a friend, Brad Van Grack, who was in the group, and and he recommended me for when they were looking for a new cast member. So I went to the audition, and it was a fabulous audition because you bring in a song that you sing, and while you're on stage singing it, they call out suggestions to you. The director and the producers call out suggestions. You know, do it like now like a Russian farmhand, now like a Southern belle. Now, so you keep singing the song, but you have to keep changing your accent and your mannerisms while you're performing. It's very much an improvisation, which is a good talent to have when you're in this group, even though it's scripted, because sometimes changes come so quickly that you have to be ready to adapt by the seat of your pants.
Were you in musical theater before you
Yes,
auditioned? And what kind of musicals had you done?
Let's see, I mostly played character parts in musicals, but I've also done like Rosemary and How to Succeed, and I don't really remember all the musicals I've done. I've been in theater for a long time, but the show that I was doing when I first saw the Capitol Steps was a show called My Name is Alice, and we were performing in the same venue as the Capitol Steps, and they invited us to come and see their show, and they came to see ours, and it was a similar format, My Name is Alice, because you're going from sketch to sketch and song to song. So as soon as I saw the show, I thought, oh, this is something I would really love to do. I could do this. And because I have the attention span of a hummingbird, so I can concentrate on one character for 2 minutes. So, but I didn't get the opportunity until my friend Brad Van Grack, who is in the group, like I said, suggested me.
Now, supposing Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Kellyanne Conway or one of the characters you were playing were to go and audition to be in a Broadway musical because their political careers are over, either in a couple of years or maybe
Next
4
week.
years after
Right.
that. What kind of role would you envision Sarah Sanders taking on Broadway?
Wow, that's a great question.
Is she there for Funny Girl? Would she be a good Dolly Levi?
She could do Dolly Levi, I think. She could also be in Grease, I think. She could do one of the teachers in Grease. She
Wicked?
could do Wicked. Yeah, well, I think Kellyanne Conway would be good for Wicked.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So,
We'll be starting a new show.
Yeah.
dream casting.
Dreamcast.
Oh, my.
Mike Thornton, you started out in musical theater before you came to the Capitol Steps.
I did.
And what drew you to audition for the Capitol Steps?
It was interesting. I was in Washington, D.C. doing another long-term show at the Kennedy Center called Sheer Madness. I think it's the longest-running play in American history. So it's just gone on forever, about the same amount of time, 37 years, something like that. And truly, I was not a real political guy. I didn't know of the group, and someone I knew said, "Hey, here's an audition in the paper. You should check it out." I said, "Capitol Steps, what's that?" Not a clue. So I auditioned for it, and as Barry said, the audition process was really fun and really cool, and I just was very goofy. I kind of tried to get in touch with my third grade self, which is what we do on stage, and they liked me, and that's how it started. I didn't realize it was a career job. It was the kind of job that, as an actress, actress says you can't get rid of, quote unquote, because it's so good. You stick with it.
And it's changing all the time.
That's right.
The
That's what
cast
makes
of
it fun.
characters changes, and so the show is always evolving. So it's not like I have a friend who's been in Phantom of the Opera on Broadway for a gazillion years, and he plays the same part over and over again. And I wonder how that must feel after years and years and years of doing the same show, because I never really feel like we're doing the same show.
Right. It's always changing, and that does keep us interested.
Right.
You mentioned you have some favorite characters that you like to play. Are there politicians, people in Washington, that provide the most material, that like nonstop? You know you're going to wake up in the morning and hear something new. That you're going to hear from your writers tomorrow saying, "Yeah, do this."
Well, I think we have the most obvious character in that regard now.
Other than the president.
Well, let's see. I think, like I said before, I think Sarah Palin, I always kind of hope that she's going to be back in the news, because, a lot of folks are hoping that she'll run again, but most of them are Democrats, so because she likes the spotlight too, and the ones who tend to love the spotlight are the ones who tend to make the news and stick around.
Right now, it's really hard to, Trump is just sort of, trumping everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to get away from, other than Kim Jong-un. It's hard to find.
Or Putin.
Or Putin. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the top three, probably.
And I think you hit it right. They all love the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So how do you not pay attention, and how do you not? Oh, I can do something with that.
Especially with social media now, with Twitter.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
it's instantaneous.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's when you guys started doing political satire, there were other groups out there 37 years ago, but now you've got SNL back on top of television. You've got the late night comics. You've got a million wannabes on YouTube and everything else. What sets the Capitol Steps apart from all these other political satire groups that have kept you going for 37 years?
Well, I think the fact that we've been around for so long, we're sort of we have our history is pretty impressive in terms of we try to keeping our finger on the pulse of politics, American politics. So I think what sets us apart is that we develop a following over the years. Like, for instance, here in the Berkshires, there are people who come up to us after the show every single night and say, "We don't miss it. This is part of what we look forward to every summer. We've been here every single year, and you just keep getting better and better." And I think that's so we're sort of a tradition, an American tradition. And I also think that the do you have any thoughts?
yeah, oh yeah. There's the big elephant in the musical satire room is that we do musical satire.
Yeah.
And we take songs that everyone knows.
Right.
Like with W, the one I was always explain. What exactly is that? What do you do? And don't go faking you're smart. I wouldn't if I could. Kind of thing. We take songs, from Don't Go Breaking My Heart, and we make it. It's we give it a twist. We parody the song,
Right.
and there's no one else that does that. And it's certainly no one else that is well known as the Capitol Steps is, because of like as Barry said, we've been around 37 years, been on NPR, shows for most of that time. A few times a year. So that's it. We've developed something, and it's fun because there's a wonderful pianist backing us up, like Howard Breitbart and others, and so you're also getting singing.
Right.
And even a little bit of dance, not heavy dance, but
Not
No,
heavy.
we can barely walk and chew gum at the same time, but we do know how to sing.
we can sway really well
Right.
together. Yeah.
And I think it was Barry who said there's like 25 of you. Have you actually all ever been in the same room together, or because some of you were on tour, some of you were here, some of you were in Washington?
I think the only time we gather is when we're celebrating a major anniversary, and they'll bring everybody in, and everybody will participate in the show. And at that time, I remember, I believe it might have been the 20th anniversary when he was retired, Senator Chuck Percy from Illinois came to the show, because it was in his office that the Capitol Steps began, because I believe it was Elena Newport and Bill Strauss wrote a parody of a Christmas carol for their traditional Christmas party. So after that, it was other congressional offices started asking for song parodies, and all of a sudden it just blossomed into a thing.
Now, Elena Newport and Mark Eaton primarily are the creative providers, if you want to say, for things. But you've also written material,
Yes.
and have you?
I've suggested some things, yeah.
How long does it take before you see a political person do something? You say, we've got to satire that. How long does it take before it actually makes it to the stage?
It can be as long as a week or so, and until we see if that particular news story has legs, as Mark Eaton likes to say, if it's going to be familiar to enough people in the audience that's worth doing a song about, or if it's a really, really big story, then we can get something into the show as quickly as the same day or the next day. Now we might be reading the lyrics off of our hands, but or we'll take a newspaper out and read them. But one of the things that audiences really appreciate about the Steps is that we try to stay on top of the news, and something that they just heard about all of a sudden is, front and center in the show.
And when do you get to the point where you say enough is enough about a particular character or personality, where you go, all right, it's run its course?
What do you think, Thor?
Am I here? Oh, I forgot I was here. Okay, let's say again.
When do you make the decision to pull a character? When it's run it, or when
That's a really
run
good
its
question,
course?
because as I said, Clinton and Bush Jr. W. They were in the show for many, many years after they were necessarily relevant, but they were still funny. At a certain point, though, you'll feel the reactions sort of die, sort of dwindle and wane. And for instance, Clinton was always really funny. He'd do a little monologue, and that was always incredibly funny. But after a while, as the reactions, sort of dwindle, then you say, okay, it's not quite hitting as it did for the last whatever, I don't know how long, 16 years, whatever. And so I think it's time to let him go, at least for now. He might do something again and pop right back in.
Now, the show that we might see if we stay tonight in Cranwell will be identical to the show in Washington, or another show on tour, or are they slightly different?
It'll be the same show, generally speaking. there are different people that play the parts that Barry and I play, so there might be different a different format because different people play different roles and so forth. But generally, it's the same material.
Right.
Although, as you were saying, Barry, we're always giving our own twist to each character, so it's always a different show, even if it's the same on paper.
Also, the Reagan Center is, since it's our home base, is a place where they tend to try out new material.
Right.
And
That's true.
And if it plays well at Reagan, then they will send it to us, and we'll put it in right away.
Now, you had said earlier in the program that most of the people that went to see the show in Washington at the Reagan Center are tourists. Do the locals in Washington and the people that work on the Hill, do they go to see the Capitol steps, and do they have a different reaction to a performance because they think they're insiders versus the general population?
That's an excellent question. I think that most of them, I would imagine they would come if they knew that they were being represented in the show. I'm not sure that a lot of them actually come to see the show. What do you think?
I don't know. I know that everyone in D.C. brings their relatives and friends who are visiting to the Capitol steps. Not everyone, obviously, virtually, but it's what you do. You know, you have family coming from out of town. You bring them to see the Capitol steps because we're a staple. You know, we are
right.
an institution.
If you want the Washington D.C. experience
yeah.
in 90 minutes. This is where you
Look, you can go to the
it.
White House and see what they do, and then you can come and see what really happens.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
You mentioned, and Mark, you mentioned this, that SNL is still on top. All of the late night comics, they do satire. They do what Capitol Steps does to some degree. Why do each of you think that live theater, as you do it, is still taking the lead in this entertainment? Yeah, in the political satire.
Part of it is that
you do?
what we do, we actually try songs out. Saturday Night Live, I'm really impressed by what they do. But because it is in 1 week, a lot of it doesn't land. You know, it doesn't land as super funny, because how can you possibly make that much material really funny without trying it out? What we do is we try songs out. We get to hone them. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, there's a laugh there. I need to build that up a little bit. So over a week or a month or longer, we can make a particular song really funny by developing it as a performer. Other places don't get chances to do that.
It's
That's
once
the
and
big
done.
thing. And also remember, it's musical parody. So
Right, and that's one of the big benefits of working here at the Cranwell, and because we perform 6 nights a week, so a show, a song that you might be doing once or twice a week in other venues or 4 times a week, you get to work on every single night, and you discover new things about it. And as Mike says, you discover new jokes, you discover new bits, and the whole thing can grow, and it just gets better and better.
yeah,
That's great.
Bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plus, I think with Saturday Night Live and some of the things that they do, they can go back, they can stop, they can cut, they can edit, and this and that. You guys just go out there and do a 90-minute show. You can't edit or cut or say, I'll do that again. It just goes.
Winging a prayer.
Yeah,
Winging
Yeah.
a prayer.
it's real live theater.
There's nothing like live theater.
It's not live unless you're there, folks.
Let me ask one other question before we go to another break. If you had the opportunity anytime let's say the Capitol Steps were here in 1865 or in 1847, is there a historical figure going back in time that you would love to have had the opportunity to satirize?
Abraham Lincoln. Although I would probably be doing Mary Todd at the time. I don't know. What do you think?
What do you, Mike?
Back in the 1800s?
Or any time going back in American history?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. That's a really hard. We don't know because we don't know how those people spoke. You don't hear them, and all you know are their writings.
Since when has that ever stopped us?
That's true. That's a good point.
But you can go back, you can go look at the news clips of the day. If you're learning Sarah Palin, you can go back to YouTube or
Right.
the news clips of the day. And in reality, 37 years ago or 40 years ago, we didn't have those opportunities.
Yeah, It's changed so much.
So when Capitol Steps started, they were parodying people that could only really see on 3 channels on the nightly news or maybe NPR.
That's one of the big things that's happened with us, is it's happened in the country, is that when I started the group 21 years ago, when I began performing with the group, the knowledge of what's going on in D.C. with people other than people like Barry, who are always on top of things, and Elena and Mark and those guys in the office, people didn't know who the Secretary of State was. They didn't know who the Speaker of the House was. A lot of people didn't even know who the Vice President was around the country. You'd be surprised. Now, people know all of this stuff. People in Canada know probably more than most of
Right.
America, but Americans do. We know what's going on now, and that's a huge plus for
Yeah,
us.
thanks to social media, people are a lot more engaged in politics than they used to be, I think.
Right? Yeah.
And people are more opinionated now. I mean, because
Oh, yeah.
they're I would assume because they're bombarded with so much real and fake information and news.
We yell at the television on Sunday morning a lot.
Do you find that working with the Capitol Steps year-round, that you're more involved in and more attuned to what's happening, that you're grabbing news shows and watching them, or do you pretty much do you stay away from social media when you're performing?
I personally, because I'm a political junkie, will stick with C-SPAN or Twitter but you have to be selective at a certain point, because otherwise it's so much that
Overload.
it's such an overload that you have to be able to step back and have a life outside of politics.
Yeah.
You've got two completely different personalities. Barry is incredibly politically attuned, and I'm sort of the opposite. I'm certainly much more political than I was 21 years ago, because I can't help it, But I don't watch a whole lot of the stuff, because it is getting a little too much.
It's annoying
Yeah.
at some point. And,
Yeah.
and what Capitol Steps does takes a lot of the annoying away from it and allows you to laugh at it a
That's
little
what
bit
folks
more.
say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They come up after the show and say, "I really needed
that."
Yeah. And the big smile on their face, and
Yes.
I said, "I haven't smiled or laughed in a long time," and
And even my wife, who she's going to yell at me for doing this, but the Sunday morning yelling at the television show, she does. And she came away from your show going, "That was the best thing I've seen," and I don't know how long. So,
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, somebody in the Capitol Steps said that buying a ticket was cheaper than therapy, and I think you're the one that
Yeah, I think I've
coined
coined
that
it.
phrase. But it certainly seems true these days, when laughter really helps getting through difficult
it
political
does.
Well,
situations.
laughter is a tremendous stress reliever, and let's face it, whichever side of the aisle you're on, it's been a very, very stressful time for a while now. And the fact that people still will show up to a political show when they get bombarded by it all day is a real testament to the fact that they really want to just laugh, let some steam off, and enjoy themselves, and they feel, as Mike said, that they can do this at our show, and that makes us feel better, because we're affected by all of this as well. We're right in the middle of it, so it really helps us as well when people are laughing at the characters we portray.
In fact, one of the shows we always do, and you're aware of this, Mark, at Sanders Theater in Harvard, is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. We always do 2 shows there in a row. 1,000-seat theater, like a 5 and a 9 or something like that. And after the election, the presidential election, sales were really not doing well. I said, well, I was producing that one. I said, these folks it's the most liberal bastion in the country, probably one of them. What are we going to do? So I changed the name to Post-Election Therapy as the title of the show. Do you remember that? And so all of a sudden, sales picked up again. People said, "Oh, okay, that's what it is." And so it really worked. I mean, they needed it.
Barry, when you joined the Capitol Steps, many of the people that were performers already had a resume of having worked on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
And now it seems that most of the people in the Capitol steps have theatrical resumes and may have done an internship on the Hill, but the scope has changed a little bit. Has it changed the way the Capitol steps works?
I don't really believe it's changed the way the steps works. I think the advantage to having been on the Hill, and I was one of those people you're talking about that when I joined the group, I didn't have any actual Hill experience, so I got a job as an intern for a House subcommittee for the concurrently for the first year that I was with the Steps. But the cool thing about doing the job on the Hill is that you get to see how the system doesn't really work from the inside, and you get to see the people that you're going to be parodying close up, and that's an experience that you don't get just as an actor. But the group got so busy that we didn't have time to do the intern thing as well.
Mike, did you ever work on the Hill?
No, I didn't. I think for the last 20-something years, it's been the people being hired that have been pretty much from the professional theater world. As people like Barry who did both, but in the last 20 years, it's pretty much been professional theater.
And people tend to join the Capitol steps and stay quite a while. I mean,
Yes.
it's not I'll be here for a year and move on. So how often does somebody new come into the company?
Not really that often. It's just unless somebody leaves, and like you said, people don't really leave. It's like a great big dysfunctional family.
Just like Congress.
We get to travel all over the country
Yeah.
and make people laugh, and we get put up in often some nice spots like this.
We get to spend the summer in the Berkshires. I mean,
Yeah.
what's not to like?
Yeah, it's a great job.
And what percentage of the time are you on the road versus being in D.C.?
That depends. If it's an election year, we start in January, like a presidential election year, we start in January, and we're pretty much on the road most of the year. You kiss your family goodbye, and you pet your dog, and you say, "I hope you remember me when I come back."
So in that case, you're out in full force in election year.
Yes.
How much do you think you sway the election?
That's a great question.
That is.
I don't know the answer to it, but it's a great question.
Well, do you have any Russians on your cast?
Any Russians?
Russians.
We have Russian characters.
Yeah.
Oh, so no direct connection to Putin or anything like that. No. Okay, just checking. All
He's
right.
the assistant director.
Choreographs.
right.
We need to examine the cast to see if we have any bots.
Yeah.
See, and what surprised me was when I asked the question, the look on your faces were a little worried.
Have the Capitol steps ever performed outside the U.S.?
Yes, I believe there was a show that was, we performed in Mexico, and we performed in Canada, and we performed in England.
What's the reaction there? Is it different than an American audience?
Well, those shows were private shows, so it was, I don't know that we've had any public shows outside of the country.
Yeah, we'd like to do. I'd like to bring us. We'd like to go to places in Canada. We're not sure exactly what the best spot would be.
Right.
After when who would actually come see us, because there's no NPR type station that runs our shows in Canada like we have here, so we don't get as much publicity. Although we know that the reactions would be fantastic.
Yeah.
We don't know if they've heard of us.
Now, you mentioned the NPR shows. You do a show twice a year called Politics Take a Holiday.
Right.
And for those of you listening now, if you wanted to catch one of the recent ones, they are up on a podcast version on the Capitol Steps website, which is capitolsteps.com.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I got a chance to listen to some in the car, but it's very difficult for me to listen in the car because I get so distracted, and the questions I want to ask you guys just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then I forget them when I go through the Lee toll booth, and all that. We're going to take a break. We're spending the day with the Capitol Steps here at the beautiful Cranwell Resort
You
in
serving lunch,
Lenox,
too?
Massachusetts. Yeah, I'm going to make you lunch during our break.
Great.
Share out of your brown bag.
Yeah, you can share my my brown bag that was prepared for me when I left home. Our Peter Coles is our engineer, Jay Pagluca. I'm Mark Auerbach. We've been talking with Barry Barron and Mike Thornton from the Capitol Steps. We're going to take a break to acknowledge our underwriters on 89.5 FM WSKB, and we'll be back with more, so don't go away.
Alrighty.
Welcome back, everyone. This is 89.5 FM WSKB. This is Mark Auerbach. I'm here with Jay Pagluca and our trusty engineer, Peter Coles, at the beautiful Cranwell Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts. We're talking with members of the political satire group, the Capitol Steps, today in our special program here on WSKB. With us now is Andy Foz, who is the technical director for the Capitol Steps, the guy who packs up the wigs and the costumes and the props and sets up wherever you guys go from town to town.
Yeah,
so welcome with
pretty
us.
much anywhere. Thanks for having me.
The backstage organizer, as it were.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the many hats.
Well, I've been to shows before, and you sell the CDs before and after the show, and set up in the lobby, and you're packing them up and toting them around from place to place. How long have you been with Capitol Steps?
2002 is when I started. So.
And did you think it was
quite the journey?
Did you think it was just a DC gig, or did they tell you you'd be on the road?
So I saw the Capitol Steps when I was maybe 15 years old, back in Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And I knew that they traveled. So when I started working for them, it was a part-time thing, and thought, I'll do this and work in recording studios. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. And, you know, they kept me around for 16 years now. So.
Were you always a behind-the-scenes guy, or were you on stage? How did you get into the magic of theater?
Well, I've never been a theater person per se before that. I was a singer and a musician and went to a recording engineering school in Washington, and that's how I got hooked up with the Steps, because I came out of that thinking, I'll just work in some studios and do some sound
gig out wherever was available.
And this was one of the first things, and I had already known who they were since I had seen them, like I said, when I was younger. So that's how it started.
Now, for the show, without giving away the magic, what do you do to help the presentation be what it is?
Well, you know, if you don't have the proper audio and the proper lighting, then of course they're not going to look or sound nearly as good as they can. I think one of the secrets in the audio industry is probably reverb, but, you know, so to speak, helps them just have that little extra something.
Makes them sound a little bit bigger than they are.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, what's set up here at Cranwell is kind of bare bones. And I don't want to say it's not just a wonderful space, but it's kind of bare bones as opposed to a theater. I saw the Northampton show you did at Academy of Music. When you walk into a place like that, which is a union house, I believe, how is it different in the preparation for the show and then when you walk in the doors?
Sure. Well, those types of venues already have all of the equipment, and of course the crew. So when we come in my capacity and the crew capacity, we're more of a liaison, kind of making sure everything goes well. I mean, if you look at how many shows we do a year and how many different venues, you know, we try to, through the sort of the preparation, you know, ahead of time, make sure that everyone knows what to expect. But every once in a while you get somewhere and they don't. But in this case, we're setting up our own gear, and so we have full control. So that's a little different as opposed to, you know, having to work with someone else and it's their gear and their people. This is our stuff. So and we keep it simple on purpose. There's a reason for that. So when you have multiple groups and multiple vans full of equipment and you never know what space you're going to be in, you kind of have to make sure that nothing's too complicated. So
which do you prefer?
Oh gosh, I think there's good and bad of both. I mean, like I said, on this side, you know, we have more control. And we can kind of get in and out and know if something goes wrong, well, I know what's going to go wrong because I can fix it. Whereas on the other hand, I guess it doesn't always hurt to do less work. But
from a technical standpoint, I see when I walked into the show I saw in Northampton, okay, 4 mics, that's kind of your lighting footprint. You're done. You know, at least from a lighting and hardware perspective.
Sure.
What happens behind the curtains?
Yeah, well, I mean, you want that to be simple kind of on purpose the 4 mics and our logo because, the focus is on the people. And obviously all the stuff behind the curtain is people scurrying around and, grabbing their wigs and their costumes. And if you don't have everything set so that they know where it is right when they need it, they might come out on stage late, and you don't want that. You don't want the wrong song and the wrong, the pianist is playing the intro for the song that's supposed to come on. So there's a lot of that kind of, hustling backstage to make sure that we're a well-oiled machine, so not in our case. But.
How many Andys are there? I mean, you've got the show in Washington, you've got Cranwell this summer, and you're touring. I believe that one's company is in Florida, one was just in Chicago.
Yep. There's enough people that we can do 4 shows simultaneously. So that's cast, pianists, and crew. So we basically make sure that everyone's available and are scheduled and such that, on any given night. So how many Andys? I guess there's 8 of us in some capacity. So if we had to do 4 shows in town with 2 crew person on each one, we could do that. Probably stretch us a little thin. Everyone would have to be not sick, not on vacation, that kind of thing. But generally, on any given Friday or Saturday, there's probably 3 shows going on. So
how do you get from city to city?
Well, anything in about a 4-hour radius of DC, we will generally drive to. Anything outside of that, we just fly. So that's always fun with the logistics of getting all the bags and things in and out of airports on time. I don't know how they do that.
How many suitcases does it take to get the props and the wigs and the costumes?
Or road cases, as it were.
7 bags, believe it or not. It all
Really?
fits in 7 large duffel bags. So that's our mic stands, our props, our set piece, such as it is. It's just the banner, which I guess you can maybe see behind me. I'm not sure what the...
We can see it.
So, that breaks down and is a pretty compact thing. So they have that. And we don't take any sound gear when we are flying. So that's all contracted out either.
You can
as
get
you
it
said,
locally,
Well, as
yeah.
you said, it's either in a theater already, which of course, they
Or in
have
a place
it,
like this, you hire it locally.
or some
Yeah.
place. We do a lot of hotel ballrooms and convention centers. So then you have a full audio production company coming in and doing all that. So.
Now, have you been you're with this cast, and you stay here and travel with them?
This cast doesn't always stay as this cast. We have people who can play various parts so that with scheduling, like I mentioned earlier, with vacations or people being sick or whatever.
They give you a vacation.
Well, this job is a vacation, but that's a whole other topic.
I get that. I really do.
But so people can play multiple parts, and they don't all stay together. I think if you were with the same cast and the same group for 16 years, I probably wouldn't be here today anymore. But
So it does make it interesting.
yeah, and it keeps it fresh being with different people. You're not.
Are you the only one backstage, or it's you? There's more than just you, kind of organizing during the show.
As far as during the show, well, generally we'll have a person out doing the audio, running the board, so to speak, and then you'll have a person backstage. Now, up here at the Cranwell, we only have 1 crew person, so I do both. I'll start the show. I'll let it get about a third of the way through, and then I go check on them and reorganize things because they're just throwing stuff around. So you got to put it back, and then I'll come back out, continue to run the show, and then maybe right before it's over, kind of go back and do one last sort of reorganization. So
There's a constant. Is there a constant battle with them messing it up and you having to straighten it out?
Yeah,
It's
I
a
don't know if
friendly
they'd agree.
rivalry.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it can get a little frustrating if but you're there for them. You're there for them to get the show done, so to speak. And
Don't
you
mess
wanna-
up my
you wanna-
organization, or I'll turn off your
Right.
mic.
Well, I'm
Okay,
doing it so they know what is in the right place, and
Yeah.
when they come back and throw something on the table and it hides everything, and then where's that? I'm like, well, you're the one who threw it, but then, we don't fight or anything. So.
When they add a song or add a skit or something like that, does that change what you have to do, or does your routine pretty much stay the same?
It depends. So in our theater back in DC at the Reagan Building, everyone is using a wireless microphone, and they have their own mic. So we are actually muting and unmuting a lot of things just like you would in theater for their body mics. So then, of course, obviously, if they don't let you know the right song and you leave something unmuted, or actually the worst thing would be to mute it so they're on stage and their mic's not on. So in this capacity, maybe you're not quite as important if they switch songs up, because you can see them coming on stage and doing a different song. But of course, back in that other venue, that would be a problem if you didn't know what was.
Are you the only
coming up?
When you're in Washington, which you're there, the performances are every Friday and Saturday.
Every
year
Friday,
round.
Saturday.
Is it your theater, or are other people using it during the week?
It's part of the federal building known as the Ronald Reagan International Trade Center. So it's owned, I guess, by the government, D.C., I'm not sure. But the theater itself, every Friday and Saturday is ours. Throughout the week, they use it for other events. Even the president has been there many times, different heads of departments and things, so it gets rented out. So we do have to tear down every Saturday and reset up every Friday.
Another reason to be
yeah.
simple. Yeah.
That's unfortunate that we can't just keep it up, but
Can you give me a corner and that's me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting. We have our own gear, and then there's some gear from the audio company that's there, and we're interfacing. So again, you kind of have to keep it as simple as possible, but it's a little more of an elaborate setup than what we have here.
And when you come into town on a tour, other than Cranwell, where you unpack for a couple of months, how much time do you have before the performance that you can get into the theater and set up? And then how quickly do you have to pack it up and move it along?
Sure. Well, the setup always takes longer than the teardown. We'll come in the case of here in Cranwell, we come in the day before, and we have full run of the place as long as it takes. But in most places, we'll generally ask for a 2-hour window. And if it takes us an hour and a half, we just like to have the extra time. You never know getting in and out of buildings, especially hotels in the middle of a city. Yeah.
Nothing goes wrong when you have extra time.
No, yeah, that's true. And, we can probably do it in a pinch in 45 minutes to an hour, but we like to give ourselves a few hours to get it all set up. And then as far as the teardown, 20 minutes, that's anything over 20 minutes, we're like, all right, this is taking too long. So
Who does the logistics? Are you the one that plans where you're going to stay and how close it's going to be to the theater, or does somebody else do that?
So we have several people in our office, which is in Alexandria, Virginia. We have someone who's doing bookings. We have someone who's doing a lot of the logistics in terms of the flights, the rental cars, the hotels, that sort of thing. We had a PR person, an accountant, and then there's me who's doing the audio recordings. And I also do the advance work, calling other tech directors and producers and people. So we all kind of wear different hats, but kind of overlap as well. So.
Is there you've been with them 16 years. Is there a particular theater
16.
or venue that has been your favorite over the time that you can't wait to go back to year after year?
Gosh, I should have thought of an answer to that. I should have figured you'd ask me something like that. No, there's some great theaters around the country. We just did the Overture Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Beautiful, gorgeous facility. And there it's very new and everything's works well and is fresh. Sometimes you get to places, what's the one up in Cambridge? You guys probably know.
Sanders.
So Sanders is great. Not that there's anything wrong with an older building, but, that's a different kind of beautiful. That's, gorgeous wood, and you feel like you're in Boston. You're in. And then there's Victorian theaters with great, beautiful ceilings and just the way, I guess, the vaudeville kind of stuff as well.
Those are some of my favorite. Is the classic vaudeville theater that's been restored, and Academy of Music Northampton is one of those. It's as I mentioned it earlier today. I had the opportunity to get a tour of the building and what they've done to it, and it's just awesome.
That was a nice one.
Yeah.
Wasn't that long ago we were there? I want to say a few months ago. Maybe.
I saw that show. Yeah.
April.
That's right.
So, what are you looking forward to? Do you see yourself continuing to do this as long as they'll have you? Do you have, or is it dangerous to ask on a radio show? What do you want to really grow up and do?
Well, it's funny you should ask. This is actually my last year. It's not because I don't want to keep working with the Steps. It's been a wonderful job and a great thing to do. go to places that you've never seen. I've been to every state except for South Dakota and Hawaii, which I don't know why they don't do a Hawaii gig. I guess maybe they figure we'd never get the show done, but
You probably have to bring the props by boat.
that's true. But I'm actually moving to Oregon in August, and I'm going back to school for winemaking.
Really?
So I plan on still doing some work in audio and production, but
From theater to
I'm
winemaking.
totally changing careers and coasts, and it's going to be a little bittersweet. I'll be glad to be focused on something new and learning some new things, but at the same time, I'll miss all these great folks.
We have a
and-
lot of wineries around here in the Northeast that
Yeah,
have
that's true.
regular entertainment.
What got you interested in the idea of going into winemaking?
I've been into wine for a little while now, but
The consumption side.
yeah, that's the taste. I like the tastings. It's always a fancy word
we
for
go.
going out and drinking. But no, I've always enjoyed kind of learning about the culture of wine in terms of the grapes, the regions. You have to know a little linguistics, a little geography. It's a lot more than just, red and white and that kind of thing. So, and I thought, well, I don't ever want to work in a restaurant behind the behind the bar as a sommelier or something like that, because that's not my speed. But I also grew up on a farm where we had strawberries, and it just sort of seemed like something I'd be into. So that's where I'm headed.
So maybe there is possibility of a Capitol Steps vintage for Democrat years and Republican years coming
I
up.
hadn't thought about that yet, but that could happen, I suppose.
You could
down
be
the road.
creating that.
Yeah, sure.
So there's your
You're going to
theme.
finance it, and I'll just.
There's your theme for your winery is all of the things you've dealt with Capitol Steps
That
and all
could-
the names.
That could happen.
As you look back at all the things that you've done with the Capitol Steps, is there one memory of a particular performance or a particular situation that you're going to remember the most?
I think it's more the people. I mean, certainly there are times when, I kind of, from someone who's watched the show many times, it's fun for me when they mess up or if they do something that's unexpected and it makes them laugh and it makes them, that's a new story for them. And especially when they get, sneak it by the audience doesn't even realize that they've
That was going to be my
something like
next
that.
question.
So
I'm
that
betting that,
happens.
you'll
Yeah.
know they messed up.
Sure.
Nobody else will.
Of course.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's the people, and especially there are a bunch of folks who have gone on to other things, and I already, miss them, and I'm sure a few years from now I'll feel the same way about these folks. But a particular time, we did have a lady one time who you mentioned the consumption of wine. I think she had a little too much and decided she was going to dance on stage behind our performers at the Reagan Building. I do have a clip of that, so maybe later I can get that to you. It'll be another week or so till I'm back in D.C.
There's a
at my office,
YouTube
but
classic. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Definitely, I'm sure.
it's really great. But she was dancing behind Hillary, and Hillary didn't even notice it. And then we had one of our crew members who was backstage come out and beckon her, and then sort of casually get her off the stage. And yeah, I'll never forget that one. That one was pretty good. So.
Any one theater that will stick out in your mind as one of the best experiences that you've had?
Well, there's a good one everywhere. I mean, honestly, I know that's a cop-out, but, when I go to Alaska and we go to, I can't remember all the names of the theaters, but there's a great one there in Anchorage, and, just to see how they deal with the challenges of being in more of a remote area. Some of the ones up here in New England that, the age on them is just astounding that they can even keep things together. And then you go out into the Midwest and you have these big ones in Kansas and Iowa, and they just have all the space in the world. And I don't know. I don't know that there's one. I really don't.
How about the other side of it? The one you'd rather not ever go to again. Don't name it, but describe it.
Well, there have been a few where it's very clear that they did not in any way listen to me when I called on the phone. It was basically a waste of a phone conversation, a waste of emails, a waste of a rider. And I don't know, folks out there, the rider is what we use to have all of our criteria listed.
Here's what we need when we walk in the door.
Exactly. That's what, we need
And
this
I can say I've
setup
seen the
and-
riders. They're very simple. I mean,
Yeah, some riders-
It doesn't take a PhD to understand what the
Correct.
requirements
You don't
are.
have to
Keep it
back out
simple,
the brown
stupid. It's the
M&Ms.
kiss, right? Yeah, all that kind of stuff. But you will get to venues where it's just, you sit there and you say, really, how is it that you were able to mess up something so simple, or places that just clearly haven't kept up any of their gear. And we can get into conversation about funding for arts and funding for these types of places. I'm sure they'd love to have better gear, but yeah, sometimes you go to places and it's kind of mind blowing that they're even a professional theater.
The podium with the built-in microphone is all I have.
And the monitors where the speakers are just
Rattling.
yeah, it's just come on, that's an
Yeah.
easy fix, and you're supposed to be pros. But those kinds of things are the exception, not the norm. So.
Well, good. Now I know, Mark, that I'm not the only one that provides such poor service. But no, truth be told, I like to think my stuff works. So.
Well, we've been talking with Andy Foz, who's the technical director for the Capitol Steps, who is one of several people that gets the Capitol Steps from city to city, from town to town, gets them here to Cranwell, keeps them running in Washington, D.C. every Friday and Saturday at the Reagan building in downtown Washington. I believe it's Federal Triangle is the metro stop.
That's one
There's
close
lots
one,
of
yeah.
parking there if you decide that you'd like to go and see them in Washington. But you have through the end of August to catch them here at Cranwell. We're going to take a break to acknowledge the underwriters of community radio programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB. Our engineer today is Peter Coles. JPEG Luca is here with me. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we're here at Cranwell in Lenox. We'll be back after those announcements to learn more about the Capitol Steps and Cranwell, so don't go away.